year. So that's what we're gathered here together. We're going to talk about product marketing. It's a hot topic in marketing right now. And I think you're going to really enjoy hearing from Brian and from Callan. And we'll get to learn a little bit more about them here in just a second. And as I did mention, we are a volunteer-led organization, but I just want to be honest with everyone here. There are expenses that go into this kind of stuff. And one of the ways that you could help us out here as we put these events on in the future is to become a member of the ANA. And so I'm going to drop a link in the chat just so you guys can check it out. It is not very expensive, but you get a tote bag. Yes, Brian will get you a tote bag and to go along with that. But we would love for you to become a member of the ANA. It gets you access to additional content. There's membership directories. There's a whole bunch of other materials and resources available for you. And if anyone's got that budget there for professional development or access to the marketing credit card where you can expense something, great way to go do that. I'm not your finance or your CFO person, so I say go and drop a membership on that company card and expense it back. Great idea, me. And then, like I said, I'll drop that link, or maybe Edwin, maybe you can help me out by dropping that in the chat, the link to that. So encourage you to go do that. That would be super helpful. And you'll get access to a lot of really great content as well. And then, as I said, we're the ANA, formerly known as the Business Marketing Association in Minnesota, and our mission is to facilitate marketing conversations through quarterly educational events. Obviously, in the last year and a half, things have changed. Maybe you've joined us in the past and we've met at a brewery or a local restaurant and we've had in-person meetings. We haven't been able to do that, so we've kind of switched to digital. Our hope, though, is that as we round into the next part of the year and vaccinations go up and the governor lifts some of the gathering restrictions, that we will be able to get back together. Right now, we are tentatively planning an in-person event for September. We'll see how it goes. We're still in flux a bit with that, but we would love to get back together in person to be able to do proper networking and share a beverage or share a meal together. So with that, all of you outside of Brian, myself, Callan, and Edwin have your camera off. So I'm going to ask you if you'd be willing, I know this is a big ask, turn your camera on. I would love to see your beautiful face and help you participate in the event. And so if you'd be willing, drop that camera on. And hopefully you'll see some people that you know from your travels, and maybe you'll get to meet some new people along the way. So those are my announcements. Thus concludes the announcement portion of this. Let's jump into this real quickly, though. And I want to introduce the speakers that we're going to have today and let them tell you a little bit about who they are and the organizations they represent. So we'll start with Callan, and then we'll go to Brian, and then I'll give you a little blurb about myself. Look at all of you. You're all doing it. Yay. I love it. Switch that view over to the gallery view there, and you'll get to see everybody, not just the person who's speaking. So Callan, tell us a little bit about who you are, who you work for, what you do, and then a bit of an overview of what product marketing means within your organization.
Yeah, it's really great to see some wonderful faces on. I'm excited to chat with all of you for the next 90 minutes or so here. I promise we won't bore you. I'm looking forward to getting in some breakout groups, so that'll be awesome. I'm Callan Young. I am the SVP of Marketing at Xperity. I was thinking a little bit about introducing myself here. What do I say? So I've been in the business like SaaS space for probably the last 10 years. What I've realized quickly and looking back is it's always a different experience at every single SaaS company I've worked for. And when I think about that with the unique needs of product marketing, I've worked at a company where all of our products were very similar in a really noisy space, and we didn't have a lot of definition, and it was really hard to sell into, which was the IT space. I've worked at a company where our product was truly a nice to have, and we were selling into the small to medium sized business, and it was really hard to get people to find the extra budget to buy our products. I've worked at, companies that have a really innovative product that are really shiny and cool, but you have to go in and you have to sell the story of innovation because people don't necessarily have a need yet. All of those organizations were mostly global organizations that spanned multiple industries, multiple personas. So it was really a lot to balance and a lot of different messages to kind of cut through that noise. About a year and a half ago, I intentionally changed it up. I got out of the global side of the house and actually wanted to just focus on one industry and see what it was like to really focus on a vertical and go really deep and to be able to provide value to one set of personas. So that's where I've ended up at Xperity. Xperity is our leader in our market. So we sell basically an operating system that's built for urgent care and people who provide on-demand healthcare services. So if you think about it, here's a story, right? You all have probably been to an urgent care. You've Googled, so-and-so doctor, or I have a sore throat, I need to go in and I need to see something. You probably had an urgent care ad pop up. You've gone to their website, you've registered or said, hey, I'm on my way, and given them their information online. You went in, you got checked in, you saw a doctor, they were typing on a computer, and then you either got a prescription sent to your local pharmacy, or you received access to your test results a few days later. I would bet you that 50% of the time that was an Xperity product that was used throughout that process and throughout that experience. And I've kind of quickly learned over the career, right, that if you don't have a story that resonates, nothing else matters from a marketing ecosystem perspective. So that's where I'm really excited to be able to talk to all of you today, have some really great conversations, and to deep dive into product marketing.
All right. Thank you, Callan. Brian, you're up.
Thanks, Mike. I probably could have seen that coming. I'm muted before that, but there we go. Thanks, Mike and Callan. Great to be on a call with you guys. I'm Brian Smith. I'm currently leading a marketing strategy for our advanced products technology group at Tenet. I've been at Tenet for 8 years. Most of my time at Tenet actually has been more on the demand generation and business marketing side of things. However, that role at Tenet encompasses a lot of product marketing as I define it. Our product group tends to be more of a product management group, which is, of course, an important function as well, but in my mind, different than product marketing. My career has been in B2B from the get-go. I started in sales and moved into marketing. I've always been drawn to that space between sales and marketing. That's, I think, where I get the most excitement. It can be a challenge for sure, but it's having had that sales background, moving into marketing, I think that's always been kind of that place where I like to be. And I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more, but from a product marketing perspective, I think activating sales teams with a product message is such a critical part of what we do. So I think where I've worked for big companies, but I've been pretty successful finding sort of building opportunities within big companies. Edwin and I worked together at Thomson Reuters, and I worked in their sort of software group back when Thomson was first getting into software, and it was sort of a startup within the big organization, which was fantastic. And then when I joined Tenet with Kyle, who's on the call, Kyle and I found what I lovingly refer to as an arts and crafts marketing group when we first joined. Very much, how many big shiny brochures can we make, and in partnership with Kyle and many others, that the function of marketing at Tenet over the last 8 years, we've built into really a growth driver and a business partner rather than just a service to the business. So it's been a really exciting 8 years to watch, going from no CRM, no marketing automation, no real data tracking to a pretty sophisticated outfit. And for a 150-year-old company that manufactures floor cleaning equipment, it's been a great journey. I always tell people at these times, I'm living my childhood dream of working in the janitorial supply business. And so very excited to talk a little bit about our perspective on product marketing.
All right, thanks, Brian. And if you haven't figured it out already, I'm Mike, and I'm the Vice President of Product Marketing at Optimizely currently. And Optimizely, if you don't know us, we're about 1,200 employees, much like Callan, we're in the software business, global presence across the world. And we make software for larger organizations, sort of mid-market and enterprise organizations, to do provide a great digital experience for their customers. So content management systems, e-commerce, website experimentation, code deploy and release applications. So kind of enterprise grade software that other B2B businesses use to power their digital experience. So I run the product marketing team there. I've got about 12 on my team right now. And product marketing includes all of our traditional product marketing. And Jared is on here. He's on my team joining us. And we also have customer marketing and events that are on my team. But we all kind of work together to tell that story of our products and why someone should take a look at what we're doing and consider purchasing our applications. So that's a little bit about me. So jumping into this here, one of the things I think is interesting. So we've got myself and Callan on the software side. We've got Brian on the physical goods side. They make floor scrubbers, which is actually, Brian, you played down. I think it's really interesting what you're doing, and the fact that you have a 150-year-old business that is still humming right along and doing great stuff makes me really inspired. So let's talk a little bit about like product marketing as it relates to both physical goods and digital goods. Where do you see the overlap of how they're similar, and where are things different in your mind? Maybe we'll start with you, Brian.
I've marketed software, I've marketed granola bars, and I've marketed floor scrubbers. And to me, it's kind of a lot of the same stuff. It's so much of it is around understanding the story you're trying to tell, how it relates to your customers. How does your product fit into that story? What is your customer up against? What is the solution you provide, and how do those things fit together? And to articulate that in a way that is clear and unique to what you can provide as an organization, that's really consistent. And that's, to me, the most fun part of all of this. Of course, my dogs have been silent up until when I start talking, and now they're going to go crazy. But
I think they agree with you.
Yeah, they're great product marketers. Just ask them about Rawhide; they know all about it. So from that perspective, I think there's a lot of consistency. I think the biggest difference in something where you're manufacturing heavy machinery is you got to plan further ahead, because we can't just push an update. When we make mistakes, it's very expensive. It involves either redesign or sometimes even having to go out into the field and fix machines. And so getting it right the first time is really critical for us. And so it just takes longer, and it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more risk in it from that perspective, but the methodology is the same.
Yeah, Brian, I think it's really interesting. The lead time on stuff is something that and there's days where I would love to be able to have years of lead time, and then other times that probably would seem a little maddening to have to plan for 2 years, for 2.5 years to release a new product. And so I think that's a huge one. I know for us, our lead times on when new stuff comes out, we try to be ahead of things about a quarter ahead, but there are many times where it is about a month ahead, and we're needing to kind of get some messaging out there and figure out how we're going to say something, whether it's we're going to acquire a company, and so we need to talk about that. We're going to release something that the product team has been working on for a while, and they're just now telling us that they're getting it ready to go. So the 2 years seems like it would be a luxury at times.
2 years is fast for us. It's I'd say our timelines right now, I'm working on things that are scheduled out to 2024 or 2025. So it's, and there's things we can do faster, but now what's interesting is our machines are becoming more connected and becoming more automated. And in those spaces, we are able to push updates. And so, there's, I think, a convergence as the Internet of Things becomes more prevalent of software and hard goods and how those development processes and how the marketing process is going to take place because of that, because so much more of what we're starting to offer is driven by software and information.
Yeah,
I think there's an opportunity though to like truly capitalize on that and just let that sit. Like let your reality set in if you are a software product marketer or if you market a service. You have the opportunity to be a lot more agile at the end of the day and to switch into that how can I help mode a little bit quicker and a little bit faster. And I think about the example, when COVID-19 hit, we switched into how can we help? How can we help urgent cares? How can we help these people stay open? How can we help them get access to the supplies to be able to give COVID tests to people? And we are really able to figure out in 36 hours, how can we strip down our product, make something free? And by being able to get the product team together and our marketing team together and to come up with a plan and to be able to execute in that in 36 hours, we were able to quickly launch a new product that had a real need at that real point in time. And about 25% of the market responded and opted into it. If we wouldn't have been able to react that quickly within that 36-hour time period and get a little crazy for those 36 hours, we would have lost that opportunity. But that's also given us momentum through the whole last year. So this is kind of an example of being agile and being able to leverage that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I just thought of this, and I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but Callan, you guys work in the medical space. Brian, you work in the Jansan space, and these are two hyper important industries as we kind of round the corner on COVID here. I mean, I can't think of like two things that are more relevant, right? Medical, and then making sure stuff is clean and sanitary. So, you mentioned one example there, but like, how has it been to pivot from a product marketing standpoint? Callan, you mentioned in a couple of hours, couple of days, you were able to rethink some of the product, but like, what did you do in terms of pivoting to address that in, kind of these two crucial industries?
We started to just listen right away. We started to call our customers. We started to call our prospects and say, what do you need to do? Like, how can you keep your doors open? They were having a hard time. They couldn't let patients come in because at the beginning of the pandemic, they didn't know whether it was safe or not or how it would affect their staff. They're like, we literally need a way other than a paper sign to tell people to not come in our clinics, but we need to figure out a way to be able to interact with them. And we're like, great, we have a technology that has two-way texting. You can get all their information. It auto sends it into your system. Let me help you with that workflow. And we were able to really quickly come up with a recommendation and provide that. And because we were able to be a little bit more agile than all of our competitors and really listen to the voice and the need of the customer right away, we're able to really help and accelerate that.
Yeah, I agree. From our perspective, very similar of really listening quickly and trying to understand what was real and what was reactionary. So for instance, we had a lot of calls right away for how can we disinfect our floors? And a lot of our competitors dove right into that and started putting UV lights on their machines and coming up with ways to disinfect floors and talking about how to really go to the nth degree. And our perspective was disinfecting a floor in the most of the time is dumb because the minute anyone walks on it, it's reinfected, and it's not where things tend to transfer unless you're talking about an operating room or a daycare. So we had to be really disciplined because our sales reps were going nuts, calling us and saying, we have to have this, we have to have that. Our competitors are throwing it out. And we did some really fast voice of customer and came back and identified, hey, there's some things we need to double down on, but a lot of these things that people are asking for are not real opportunities, even in the short run, much less in the long run. What we did do though, is we doubled down on robotics, and to understand really what was happening. I mean, I really wish I was in the cleaning chemical business last year, because that was legit crazy. Like a friend of mine who recently left for a chemical company, they had 1,200% growth year over year. Like that's not a bad year over year. Sucks to have the comp for next year, but you know, they for a while were the only people that had the hand sanitizer in the country. So it's a good place to be. But for us, you know, we're the machine that dispenses that stuff. We're not the chemicals. So, but what we did realize is that cleaning teams were getting taxed really badly, because they were being asked to do 2 or 3 or 4 times the amount of work that they were being asked to do before, but not given more people or more resources. And that opened the door for automation really wide for a technology that's been, I'd say, getting adopted at a speed within the JanSan industry that's much faster than others. It accelerated even further. So we replanned our whole year in 2 weeks from a marketing perspective, to go from a much more broad perspective to being laser focused on robotics. And we doubled down and developed a ton of content in a very short period of time to really push our robotic solution. And it was effective.
I think one of the key takeaways for this group, because it's, you know, we might not have the extremes of a pandemic, hopefully not, knock on wood, for a little bit, but there might be, you know, you might be in an industry where, you know, there is some sort of event that creates a really big need that you weren't expecting, and you go into that how can you help mode. I think, you know, listening to the voice of the customer, you know, doing everything that Brian and I just gave you examples about is key. But the other thing that we learned is you need to reduce the barrier to entry. So once you've created it, or once you have what you think is going to add value, you're going to want to, let me tell you about the rest of the company and what we do, and add on and take advantage of that. But that's not helping. That is not helping in the moment. And we have to resist that urge as marketers and as a sales team to add that process in. Because if you make the barrier to entry too high when somebody has a need or a want, they're not going to follow through with that action. They're just going to go somewhere else and say, okay, hey, the barrier to entry here is less and I need this now. So I think that is one takeaway that we took as a team, is if there's a moment of panic or somebody needs something in real time as quickly as possible, just make sure you're aware that you're reducing that barrier to entry across that entire experience, or it's not going to be able to provide the value that you truly believe you have at the end of it.
For sure. I had a really interesting discussion with one of our engineers yesterday, actually, about transitioning from what I would call customer-driven innovation and VOC to customer-centric VOC and development. And it's kind of the dark shadow of VOC, where I would say for a lot of Tennant's history, we would be what I call customer driven, which is a customer asking us for something and then we go make it, right? Customer comes and says, hey, we want this kind of sweeping technology, and then we go make it. That puts us in a reactionary position, and it puts us always a little bit behind. And we're trying to then shift our focus from VOC to say, let's not just ask them what they want. Let's figure out what they might need tomorrow that they don't know that they need yet, right? That sort of Steve Jobs approach, right? And that's a big shift for us. But it takes discipline to say, like, we're not just going to jump right to a solution that someone suggests to us. We're going to try to figure out what is the underlying problem. Yeah, I'll give you an example. We're looking at a situation right now. So our machines squirt stuff on the floor, move it around, and suck it back up again. That's pretty much what they do. And you can imagine the stuff that we pick up is nasty. And there's a tank for that. And that tank gets nasty. And so we're looking at solutions right now to basically clean that tank in an automated way, so that you don't have to get in there with a hose and spray it out, because that's a terrible job. Well, our engineers came back with this like super complicated set of sprayers and pumps and stuff. It looks like a dishwasher inside now. And I was going through it with them and like, this is great, guys, but maybe we could start with not having a flat bottom of the tank. And my comment was, like flat bottom toilets are not very effective. That's the sort of thing where they started with the solution. They knew the problem and then they went right to a solution to work through that. But to back up a little bit and say, look, let's look at all the different ways we can solve this problem. And I, again, not necessarily just take the idea that our customer gave us, but to really think through and find the right solution for it.
I love it. I love it. So both of you have talked a bunch now about listening to that voice of the customer, trying to get out in front of identifying what those customers need or what they're going to need maybe down the road. And I think we would all agree on this call that listening to your customer is a pretty important deal. Like no one's going to argue that, right? So I guess the question then becomes, how have you done that? How have you found success in being able to solicit that input and then get it into where it needs to get into? Whether, Brian, it might be in your case, it's into those engineers to say, hey, maybe don't bolt the dishwasher to the back of the thing, just put a cone at the bottom and yay. Or is it, getting into those sales materials or whatever? So like, how have you found it's been helpful to solicit that input from the customers and always be kind of attuned to what's going on with them?
I think I would emphasize the part of your question is like listening to customers and hearing customers. I think when I think about product marketing and product marketers and anybody who's talking to the customer, it takes a skill to be able to listen and to be able to ask open-ended questions. So I think if you're doing that, if your teams are doing that, practice it, because we're all probably not as good at it as we think. So, I just hired a new customer marketing manager and she's wanting to go out and interview at least 2 customers a month, which is great. But I'm like, okay, hey, you need to practice this a couple of times internally on people and rip off that Band-Aid and also stop talking and just listen. I also get a lot of product marketers who are like, I don't know if I can talk to a customer, I'm super nervous, or people internally are nervous. And I was joking with Mike and Brian when we were talking the other day, what's the worst they're gonna say? No, I don't want to talk to you. So to remind yourself that, and to remind your teams that of like, okay, hey, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to call this person or this person's not going to want to talk to you. All right, well, then you can call somebody else. I'm sure you can find someone else who wants to talk to you. So I tend to like to lead with that. Where I look at how we get feedback and how the team does that, I try to get the team to talk to at least 2 customers a week. Especially if you're a product marketer. So do you have that time scheduled? Make sure they're not the same 2 customers. We also have set up, and this is maybe more for the demand gen people or the event people on the phone. We set up an executive connect. So we actually just invited the top CEOs and C-level executives at all of our key customer accounts and some of our key prospect accounts to just come and chat. It's like a coffee talk with your peers. We do it the third Thursday of every month, and we send out an email and we ask for hot topics, and we bring some of our industry data on the phone that we have from our systems, and we just talk through it. And we let them talk and we let them connect with each other. And if we have seed questions, we want to land from here and there, but we get a really great industry perspective that way. So it doesn't always have to be through those customer interviews. I think there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And those are just some tactics that we've worked through as a team.
Yeah, that's great. For us, that's fantastic, Kelly. I love that. We complement that. This maybe isn't true for everybody. We complement that with a lot of discussion with the various analyst firms. We participate in a ton of Gartner, Forrester, IDC, that type of stuff. And so we leverage their expertise in addition to what our customers are saying. So then you get kind of the academic ivory tower viewpoint of like where are things going in the future of the industry, along with the, hey, this is today, I'm your customer, this is what I need, this is what we need. So I love that. And we kind of offset it with a lot of discussions with folks at Forrester and Gartner and stuff. Brian, how about you guys? Is your team meeting with folks twice a week, or is there some other model that you have?
I'd say we do meet with customers regularly. I don't know if everybody's doing it twice a week. That's a high bar, but I think it is critical for us to be directly engaging with customers. Depending on your budget, I mean, we do a fair amount of kind of traditional formal research as well, where we're going out and running surveys and doing ethnographic research and things like that as well. Again, with that sort of with our need for certainty in some of these things, we do need to make that investment sometimes up front to make sure that what we're designing for is correct. But we don't even always have the ability to sort of beta test things either. I mean, that's a process. One of the things we're working on right now, though, that I'm pretty excited about is oftentimes when we want to do more informal voice of customer, the way we have to go about it today is cumbersome. We have to go out to our field sales folks. We have to get them to find people for us and talk to them. If we're not hiring someone to go do a panel, it's really cumbersome. So we're in the very early stages right now of building we don't have a good name for it yet, but the working name is like a tenant innovation community, where we get customers to opt in at various levels. We gather a bunch of data about them, and then eventually, hopefully, we'll have several hundred people in this community so that we can go, and if we're looking for a specific customer type or whatnot, they've already opted in, we can contact them directly to do a survey or an interview or whatnot, and sort of build out that resource for us so that we can do it in a more nimble and efficient way, and also start to control for sample bias and whatnot. We tend to talk to the same customers a lot. So this would give us the ability to make sure we're not doing that. Something we're gonna have to build over time, but I'm excited about that. We also use advisory boards, I think similar to what Callan was talking about. But honestly, like even just informal times, if I'm have the ability to work a trade show, that's always a great opportunity for me to just talk to as many people as I possibly can. Or several years ago, we did a whole series of customer videos, and I went around the country interviewing customers, and that was probably one of the best things I did, because I get to spend an hour with people and really talk through things. So any of that kind of informal stuff is important. Edwin asked what we're doing to attract people to the community. I think it's a combination of things. One, when people actually participate, we'll be giving some small compensation for those participation pieces. But there's a lot of folks in our industry who are just excited to be a part of stuff like that. And it's a little bit of pride of, being asked. So we'll see. I mean, again, we're really early, so we haven't even really started recruiting in earnest yet. So, I'll tell you in a year what worked. But we tend to have customers, when we do talk to them doing VOC work, they always tend to finish up by saying, hey, call me anytime. I love doing this kind of stuff. Like, I think people just sort of dig it.
I love the idea of the innovation network, because I think it goes back to that point, is like, are you talking to the same customers over and over again? They say there's naturally like the 80-20 rule. So we're only talking to about 20% of our customers, or 20% of our customers are the most noisy of the group. So you always hear from them, you always hear what they need, you're calling them up, asking their opinion. So how can we really figure out that other 80%? And something like that innovation group would really allow you to be able to do that in a quicker, more effective and efficient way.
Yeah, and I think there's layers of that 80-20 where sometimes the ones that you hear the most from are not the ones that maybe make up 80% of your revenue. And so it's really important too to understand, like, who are you talking to and how big are they in the context of your business? If Walmart calls up and asks us something, we're probably going to listen pretty closely. But if Bubba's cleaning service from Alabama calls us and they own 2 of our scrubbers, like, maybe we don't need to redo our product line for Bubba.
Not that we have anything against Bubba. I'm sure.
No, Bubba's great, but that's a customer we could lose.
Yeah, and so you had mentioned this earlier when we talked, Brian. And have you guys actually sat down and done any kind of like formal analysis around that to say, like, you know what, we actually hear from some of these customers that aren't really huge revenue drivers for us. Have you done any of that kind of work to make that
Mhm.
distinction?
Yeah. So the way we think about it is very much in that sort of 80-20 framework where we look at, all right, who are the customers that are providing 80% of our revenue? And it's a small number. And what are the products that are also driving 80% of our revenue, which is also for us a relatively small number compared to our total line of SKUs. And then we sort of look and say, all right, so for those 80% products to 80% customers, that's our core business. That's what we have to be best at. That's where we have to win every time. For those 20% products that are 80% customers buy, we got to be good at those too, to keep those customers happy. For the 80% products sold to 20% customers, that's gravy. And for the 20% products sold to 20% customers, we got to quit doing that. That's been a really great framework for us to simplify our product lines, think about where we're putting our resources from a marketing perspective. And, you know, for those of you who might be getting into account-based marketing, it's a really good place to start too, with how do you line up account-based marketing and product marketing to say, all right, we're going after our biggest customers with our best products, and we're not going to worry about the whole line. We're going to just worry about the stuff we know we're going to win with.
Yeah. Yeah. And this process actually led you guys to discontinue your most expensive product, right?
We did. Yeah. I mean, we've
That's
just
huge. I mean, that's a pretty big deal when the company says, hey, this thing that we charge a lot of money for, we did the analysis on it and we're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah. And over the last 2 years, we've dropped 30% of our SKUs. We've discontinued almost 30% of our SKUs. So with minimal impact to revenue and certainly minimal impact to margin. So it's, you know, I would say we have a lot of SKUs. So it's, but these are just 30% of our equipment SKUs. I'm not even talking parts, which is a whole nother mess that is not
that's awesome.
in scope today.
Yeah, for sure. And okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit because we have a few more minutes, and then I want to break up into groups because I want everyone to get chatting about what they're doing. But one question that's kind of on my mind here is, you know, obviously product marketing kind of covers, I like to say it's the bridge between sort of the science and the creativity. We kind of sit in the middle in that we have to have deep understanding of like really technical stuff, but also know how to speak to people and convey that information in a way that just about anybody could get it. And I find, and maybe this is the case for you, maybe it's not, Jared and I are working through this right now at Optimizely, that educating our internal folks sometimes seems like it's more challenging than educating the external world, like getting salespeople up to speed. Like, let's say they're new, or we introduce some new product lines and we have to like teach them about how to sell this stuff. That's a big job, and it's a big part of our time. So I'm just kind of curious, have you guys like thought through like where you put your emphasis, whether it's external, internal? Does it change all the time? Like, how are you making sure that everyone, and I mean literally everyone, knows what they're doing when it comes to the products?
You can take that one. You want to go?
You got it.
No, you want me to go?
You go.
Okay. I can go. I would say, you know, I would invest my time, and this could be controversial, more on, in my brain, more on internal. Yes, you need external, you need the marketing, you need the positioning, you need to be pushing the most recent white paper out. But I would argue that you need to spend as a product marketer as much of your time as internal enablement as external, because if you can get your 1,000, tens of thousands, 300 employees all talking in the same way, they're going to be way more effective and be able to reach way more people than just the recent white paper, or recent campaign, or your recent website. So, you know, kind of to Mike's point, this adds like a whole nother skill set and level. And maybe Jared, this is why it's hard for you, is like, now you need to be a really great enabler and program manager, and you need to align everybody cross-functionally. And that's on top of having to be analytical and creative to figure out how to say it and what to say. I see a lot of teams and a lot of product marketers. This is a challenge. So I like to really encourage the teams to take a step back and talk about, okay, we have to have an interlock. We are essentially an interlock across the entire organization. We're on the hook for making sure product has the information, marketing has the information, sales has the information, CS support, right? The list can go on and on depending on where you need to go. So what I like to start doing as a leader and encourage my teams to start doing is to talk about, hey, we have this interlock. We have to have these pieces and these connections already on the table to be able to make sure that everybody is enabled at the right time with the right message. So I would just stress that you use that interlock language if you want. You can steal it from me, but then take a step back and say, okay, where are these touch points that we're meeting with this team on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, and really start to practice that with having specific agendas of what you want to do and what you want to say then. I was going to look, I pulled together a list, I think, of all the, places where we put enablement in to make sure people are talking consistently. So a couple of ways where I think we've made people feel special, because at the end of the day, you have to cut through the noise of what they're hearing in the meetings. It's like, I'm talking to you because this is special for you, because it's going to provide value to you in this way. So we've tried to figure out, like, how can we include whatever the next greatest messaging or positioning or what we want to highlight into any weekly team meeting. So the weekly sales meeting, we actually will meet with the sales leadership the day before in our leadership huddle and be like, this is what you need to say. And we make them repeat it and we make them say it. So then they're saying it and we're not just the only ones saying it. We'll mail our reps things to make them feel special. Like, hey, we're mailing you this new brand. We are launching a new brand book with our messaging and positioning, and we're mailing it to every single employee in the company. And we're sending them a nice note, and we're basically saying, you're the advocate, you're the person who's going to be able to push this brand forward. Please read this brand book. And then we're going to follow it up at the company all hands next month. Trying to think of the other things. Change the voices speaking. So Jared, I keep picking on you because you're on Mike's team. Let's say you're speaking and you're running a sales training, and there's 3 really big points you're trying to get across. Have Mike in the middle of your presentation say, okay, everybody stop. If you're not listening to Jared and you're going to take away these 3 things, listen to Jared now. And it makes everybody on that Zoom meeting stop and listen to those 3 things.
Happy to do that. Happy to do that.
Just be really clear with what you want to communicate, I think, is the biggest piece to this hurdle at the end of the day.
Alan, love it. Love it. Brian, you got a large organization that you're working with, thousands of employees. Some of them, some of them have been doing this job for a long time. So how do you handle?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, we're, like I mentioned, we're a 150-year-old company. We've got a lot of legacy folks. We sort of lovingly refer to a lot of our sales reps as male, pale, and frail. Folks have been around a long time, and we struggle a lot with, am I still on here? Yeah, we struggle a lot.
Yeah, no, you're good. What I good with that one.
Yeah. We struggle a lot with what I refer to as sort of the tenant mythology, right? Like we have a lot of brand pride and a lot of history in our brand that may or may not be totally applicable to the current market. And so, to Callan's point, I agree that the internal communication is a lot more challenging because our customers don't have that baggage.
Oh no, did we lose him?
Did we lose Brian?
We might have lost him.
Oh no, Brian, you're right on the cusp of some amazing insight. Are you back? Brian, are you back?
Yeah, sorry. God, it was going to be so good too. So, our customers don't have that baggage of that mythology, right? So we're not having to retrain our customers all the time. A lot of times it's tougher to sort of retrain the way that our internal folks think about what we do and how we do it. A great example is actually with our robotics program. We launched our first robot, and it was basically an automated version of a machine we already made. And that first one that came out was about 4 times as expensive as the traditional version of that same machine. And when we initially launched it, our sales force was really nervous about that price point of saying, how can I possibly sell the same machine for 4 times what I would normally sell it? And then we started going to trade shows with it and talking to customers, and customers would say, well, what does it cost? And we would sort of, go, well, it's this much. And customers would go, oh, well, that's it. Because the customers are thinking about it in the context of, I can not have to have a person on my team for 5 years. Whereas our reps are thinking about it of it's 4x the regular machine. And, it took a while for them to sort of come around to that, but changing those parameters of how they already think about things and telling a new product story is really challenging. And I believe the only ways to really make it happen is to either, especially with sales reps, you either make it easy or you make it rich, or you do both. And ideally you do both. So, and sometimes it's just finding stuff. I mean, we implemented a new sales enablement platform this last year. Our entire goal for doing it was just to take the thousands of documents in dozens of places and cut them down and put them in one place. And just doing that was a huge breakthrough for our team. The first pass we did, I think I was telling you guys in our prep call, the first pass I did, I inventoried 60,000 documents that our sales reps had access to. And the first pass I did, which literally took me 45 minutes of taking out the obvious stuff, took it down to 10,000.
Wow.
Apparently they don't need the 2011 price list anymore. I mean, come on. And then, we eventually got it cut down to about 3,500 documents. Still a lot, but now that it's in one place, it's highly searchable. It's highly organized. It's all the metadata is updated. They can find stuff, and they're not going off and creating their own things. Oftentimes creating things that we've already done for them that they just didn't know we had or couldn't find.
Yeah.
So that's been a huge step, and it feels like a simple thing, but it's not.
Yeah, for sure. This is actually a really great segue, because what I want to do now is I want to break out into some smaller groups. Edwin is going to randomly assign you into a group. And what we want to do is take them out, 10, 12 minutes, something like that. And just do real brief, 20 seconds, your name, your role, your company. And then I want you guys to discuss this question, which is, how do you go about understanding your customers? And what have you been doing to kind of take that understanding and turn it into valuable content? And so I want to have this discussion. And then when we come back, I want Brian, Cal, and myself to have a discussion about some tools, because everyone wants to know, what are the right tools I need to be looking at? And Brian, you just hit on that. So we can wrap up our discussion today with a little overview of some tools that we found helpful. So, well, hopefully that was fun. You get to meet some new people. I know I got to chat with Rachel, and I've never talked to Rachel before, so that was great. I'm going to do this. I'm going to call on both Brian and Callan, because I don't want to put anybody else in the spot. But give me the 2 or 3 highlights from your discussion. And let's go. And I'll start off, because I don't want to be just volunteering people without me doing it as well. So. One thing that I picked up that I really liked was Susan pointed out, not just talking to customers, but talking to prospects, especially as you're looking to move into a different vertical or into a different space. Maybe you're going up market or something. So making sure you get on those calls to have those conversations with prospects, yes, obviously that's really good. And Rachel mentioned Gong. I don't know if you guys use Gong or not, but it's been very helpful for them to get some good analysis around those phone calls, around what people are talking about, and kind of crunching that down a little bit, so you're not having to wade through hours of actual calls. So that's a good tool to think about as you do this. And then the final thing is, we were talking about how do you talk about when you go into a different vertical or you do a different market, how do you do some of that analysis? And for us at Optimizely, we just buy a company and then oh look, now we have more product and we got to go figure that out. But Susan over at 6sense, they've been doing a lot of research on your ideal customer profile and does it make sense to go after this vertical or after this geo? And they've learned manufacturing, financial services, some other verticals are a really good fit for them, but there's maybe some others that aren't. So for example, we're not going to put a lot of time into New Zealand, Australia, because the types of companies that we want to go after, there aren't enough of them there to make it worthwhile. So those are some of the things we talked about. Brian, how about your group?
Well, we had a great discussion. I think the part I thought was kind of a theme throughout was just this idea of how do we synthesize all this information together. That, you know, we've got different ways that we're connecting with customers, whether it's formal research, whether it's interactions with our sales or customer success teams. And, you know, Heidi and I have the same challenge where, you know, we might have had 5 or 6 or more research projects around a certain topic, but now they're all decks in a drive somewhere. And, you know, how do we put all that stuff together into a story and then keep all that data and those insights sort of organized? I think that's a big challenge. We didn't answer the question. We just noted it as a problem.
Good. Good.
And we were also talking a little bit too about just building up that feedback loop for teams, so that internal feedback loop. So, you know, does the client success team know where to put in feedback and how to submit it? So it goes back to the greater channel, whether that's marketing or product or whoever. And then do they feel comfortable sharing the information, whether it's good or whether it's bad, so they don't withhold stuff. So making them feel like they kind of have a safe place. We kind of deviated into tools a little bit too, Mike. I think, you know, we're a, you know, smaller size software organization, and we don't have a competitive intel team. We don't have that luxury. So we have recently bought a tool called Clue. There's a bunch of different kind of like competitive intelligence tools, but it allows us to, as a bunch of different teams, product, enablement, sales, CS, marketing and product marketing, to be able to, one, have live feeds to intake competitor data in, but also for people to jump in and house it. Like we have a Slack channel that's directly tied to Clue. So you could be like ECW competitive intel, you type it in and it puts it into the ECW card. So then when we review it on a monthly basis in one of our interlocks, we have it right there, and it makes that session a lot more productive. So that's an example of a tool.
Yeah, great. So you guys use Clue. We've looked at Clue. We've also looked at Crayon. So if you're looking at comp intel stuff, Clue and Crayon are kind of like the 2 leading platforms out there, I think. So that's good. We mentioned Gong for doing some of the sales stuff. Brian, I know you guys recently implemented a sales enablement tool. What have you found effective there?
So we implemented a tool through Accent Technologies, which is a smaller player in sales enablement. So they're a competitor to like Seismic and Showpad and some of those that you probably might be more familiar with. We looked at a lot of different options. We landed on Seismic for a number of reasons. One, they have good technology, which a lot of them do, but their level of support for us has been unbelievable, and their willingness to sort of work with us to do some custom work to meet a few special needs we have. You know, as I told you guys, we have a lot of reps out there who still like to have shiny brochures, and so we had to have a way to order print through the tool. So they were able to work with our printer and build a connection between their tool and that one. So they've been great. And that's the tool that we use to get all of our stuff into one place. And it's and what's interesting is they have a lot of more advanced features that our reps are starting to discover and use for sharing and tracking the sharing that they're doing with customers and things like that. So it came at just the right time as the pandemic started, that's for sure.
Yeah. We're using for sales enablement HighSpot. Kellen, I think you guys are as well, and they're kind of the dominant player in the sales enablement world. But it's been pretty good. It seems like it's a nicer version of SharePoint, but I'm sure there's features and functions that I'm not quite using just yet. But it's been helpful to be able to create like they call it a spot, but it's like a page, whatever, that's got all of your product stuff there. So if your rep is like, hey, I don't know enough about this particular product, they can go there, and then all of the positioning, the documents, the customer stories, all that kind of stuff is there. And then they're able to, share that out and get some tracking around that as well.
iSpot was in our top 3.
Yeah.
Another topic that we talked through, Heidi briefly mentioned it, is like getting people to trust you as a product marketer or product management expert, and kind of like bringing people, because we do have to work so cross-functionally across different teams. People have their own assumptions and views about our roles. So bringing people along better on the journey with them, so they're not just necessarily hearing it from you, but they're hearing it from the customer, exactly from somebody else's voice. Alongside bringing people along the journey and leading them to water. Another thing I've tried to do is bring something new to the conversation. And I think as marketers, what we can bring as something new is intent data. So that goes to kind of like, right, the 6 Sense side of the world and the demand-based side of the world. Is what we've been able to do is like, hey, we're going to introduce a new product in the fall. We're going to start talking to our customers about it. We're talking to small groups about it right now. But we basically set up listening campaigns. So we can be like, okay, hey, we sent this very specific message to these, 30 accounts. Did they go search for competitors? Did that cause them to shift their buying behavior? And what did they do because of that? So it's been kind of cool. Or we're able to talk to them about, hey, we see all of these accounts, they're searching these trends and they're searching these industry terms. How are we aligning to that? Or how can we talk to people about that? So being able to bring intent data, and that's something we as marketers are pretty much the only people who can bring into the conversation, has been cool to kind of help build up our report insights that we can bring to the cross-functional team.
Yeah, on the intent data side, not because she's just on the call, but we use 6 Sense at Optimizely. It's been a fantastic tool for that intent data. And we've actually kind of shifted. We were doing a lot of work around our ideal customer profile and doing all this research and putting it all together. And I kind of like abandoned all of that and said, we're going to use our 6 Sense model to develop our ideal customer profile, because it includes intent data. It includes what's happening in the industry. It includes all of our historical stuff, and it kind of has AI machine learning to help figure that out rather than me crunching a bunch of numbers. So obviously 6 Sense is kind of built for ABM type stuff, but even just on the ICP, figuring that out, it's been fantastically useful for my team.
I'm willing to bet that it becomes more common than not that marketing makes sales territories in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
You can tell me I don't think it now, but I think that is more common or not, especially if you're in the business-to-business tech space, that marketing will be asked to lead target accounts, and then sales territories and planning.
I will say, I think it's also important to note as we talk about tools, and is that there's wonderful, powerful tools like 6 Sense and others out there. But if you don't have a solid underlying process to begin with, the tool's not going to solve your problem.
No.
And I think that's something that we continually run into of like, if we need our sales force to be doing what they need to be doing first before we can implement a tool to help bring them to the next level. And I think that's where we've struggled with intent data and things like that. If they're not following up on the leads they're getting today, why should we spend more money to give them better leads if they're not doing it? So Susan, awesome. A fool with a tool is still a fool. That's fantastic. And it's true. So, we're trying to evaluate to have the right tech stack and tools, but also how do we evolve our systems and processes to support those tools.
I love it. Hey, I think that is a great place to end on. We've been at about an hour and a half here over lunch. I want to end a little bit early so that you guys can get a bio break before your next thing, or go get a sandwich if you didn't get a chance to grab one. But I just want to say, Callan, Brian, thank you so much. This was super awesome. I learned some stuff here, and I'm hopefully that you guys did as well. And kind of hoping that you guys have some comments on the format. Did you like it? Did you not like it? let us know, and we'll plan accordingly as we think about future events. We actually have a team meeting, planning meeting later today. So I'm sure we'll talk about this during that call. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your participation in the groups. And I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and get outside and enjoy this nice weather we're having. All right. Bye, everyone.